The airport was unusually busy that morning. People hurried through the terminals, dragging suitcases and holding coffee cups as announcements echoed across the hall. Among the travelers was an FBI agent named Daniel. He had just finished a long and difficult assignment in another city and was finally going home after 3 exhausting weeks. To him, it was supposed to be a normal day, just another flight after years of travel. He looked calm, wearing a simple shirt and jeans, trying not to draw attention. Most people around him had no idea who he was or what he did for a living. That was exactly how he liked it. Daniel had spent most of his career solving cases that required patience and truth. He was respected by his colleagues, trusted by his department, and known for being quiet but sharp. He had seen the best and worst sides of people. Yet even with all that experience, nothing had prepared him for what was about to happen that day. He reached the security checkpoint and placed his belongings on the conveyor belt. His phone, wallet, badge, and a small carry-on bag. The line moved slowly. Children were crying somewhere behind him. A man in front was arguing about taking off his belt, and the officer at the scanner looked tired from the morning rush. Daniel waited calmly, glancing at his watch. He had plenty of time before his flight. When it was his turn, he stepped through the metal detector. A sudden beep echoed. The officer stopped him and asked him to step back. Daniel smiled politely and tried again. The alarm went off once more. The officer asked if he had anything metal on him. Daniel checked his pockets but found nothing unusual. His belt buckle was plastic, his watch was digital. He handed them over to try again, but the sound repeated. "Sir, we'll need to do a body check," the officer said, not sounding suspicious, just following routine. Daniel nodded. "Of course. Do whatever you need." He had gone through similar checks before. It was part of travel life. Still, something about the way people began to stare made him uncomfortable. A few passengers nearby pulled out their phones, probably thinking it was something serious. Daniel stayed still as another officer joined in. They asked him to step aside into a small inspection area near the checkpoint. He lifted his arms and followed every instruction. He wasn't angry, just slightly embarrassed. After all, he knew he had nothing to hide. The officer used a handheld scanner and ran it along his sides. The machine beeped again near his pocket. When they checked, there was only a small metal pen, the same one he used for his reports. "That must be it," Daniel said lightly. The officer nodded, smiling awkwardly, but then another sound came from the machine. "Strange," the officer muttered. They decided to do a full-body pat-down just to be sure. By now, a few people in line were whispering. Someone said loudly, "I think he's FBI, look at his badge." Daniel turned his head slightly. The badge, which he had placed in the tray, was visible on the belt beside the scanner. A young man near the line pointed his phone toward him, recording. Daniel didn't react. He had learned long ago that sometimes silence was the only answer. He kept calm even as the whispers grew louder. A woman behind him muttered, "Why would an FBI agent be searched like that? Maybe he did something." The officers continued the search carefully. They were respectful, though clearly nervous. After a few minutes, they found nothing suspicious. One of them apologized. "Sorry for the inconvenience, sir. The scanner's been acting up today." Daniel gave a small nod. "It's all right. You're just doing your job." He collected his things, put on his watch, and walked toward his gate. But what he didn't know was that the moment had already been recorded from 3 different angles and uploaded online within minutes. As he sat at the gate waiting for boarding to start, he noticed a few people still looking at him. He opened his phone and saw a message from a colleague asking if everything was fine. That surprised him. How could anyone know? He checked online, and there it was. A short clip of him standing with his hands up while security officers searched him. The caption read, "FBI agent caught in airport body check. What's he hiding?" Daniel stared at the screen in disbelief. The video had already gathered hundreds of comments, most of them filled with speculation. Some people defended him, saying it was probably a misunderstanding. Others accused him of being corrupt. A few made jokes. It spread fast, too fast. He hadn't even boarded the plane yet, and his name was already trending. He called his supervisor immediately, explaining what had happened. His supervisor sounded calm but firm. "Don't worry, Daniel. We'll handle it. Just get back safely." But Daniel could hear something in his tone. Concern. The bureau didn't like unwanted attention, especially online. The flight home was quiet, but his mind wasn't. He couldn't stop replaying the scene. The officer's tone, the sound of the beep, the whispers, the phone's recording. He wondered how something so simple could turn into something so damaging. He had lived his life by rules and honor, yet here he was, turned into a viral subject by strangers who didn't know the truth. When the plane landed, Daniel checked his phone again. The video now had millions of views. News blogs had picked it up. Headlines twisted the story. FBI agent detained at airport, body search raises questions, and government official under investigation. None of it was true. But once the internet decided a story, truth didn't matter anymore. He turned off his phone, took a deep breath, and walked out of the terminal. The cool evening air hit his face, but it didn't feel refreshing. His stomach was tight with worry. He knew what came next. Public pressure, questions from higher-ups, and media waiting for a comment he wasn't ready to give. That night, he couldn't sleep. His phone kept buzzing with messages. Some were from old friends asking what had happened. Others from unknown numbers sending insults. His family called, worried and confused. His mother asked if he was okay, and he tried to sound calm. "It's nothing, Mom, just a misunderstanding." But deep inside, he knew it wasn't that simple anymore. The next morning, when he arrived at the bureau, the mood was different. People avoided eye contact. A few whispered quietly. His supervisor called him in and asked him to sit down. "We've seen the video," he said carefully. "The department has decided to put you on temporary leave until this clears up." Daniel sat silently. He knew it wasn't personal, it was procedure, but still it felt like betrayal. "You know I didn't do anything wrong," he said quietly. His supervisor nodded. "I believe you. But public image matters. You understand that?" He walked out of the office feeling hollow. Years of service, countless missions, and now one short video had undone everything. Outside, reporters were waiting near the building, shouting questions. "Agent Daniel, were you carrying illegal items? Is it true you're under investigation? Can you confirm the rumors?" He kept walking, ignoring them, his jaw tight. Cameras flashed, and he knew those pictures would appear online before sunset. The noise around him felt distant. All he could think about was how quickly truth could lose to assumption. Later that day, he sat alone in his car, scrolling through his phone again. Every major platform had shared the clip. Even people he didn't know had opinions about him. Some were calling for his resignation. Others said it was a setup. But no one actually knew the full story. He looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror and barely recognized himself. Just yesterday, he was a respected FBI agent. Today, he was a headline. The strange part was that no one had asked for his side of the story yet. They didn't need it. The internet had already decided what they wanted to believe. As night fell, Daniel sat on his couch, the TV playing another news segment about him. They replayed the clip again and again, each time with new commentary. The host called it a shocking turn of events. Daniel turned the volume down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. He had dealt with criminals, solved dangerous cases, and faced real threats. But nothing compared to this. This was invisible, uncontrollable, and everywhere. A simple misunderstanding had turned into a public trial. He thought about deleting his social media accounts, but then decided against it. If he disappeared, it would only look worse. Instead, he sat there quietly, thinking of what to do next. He knew he couldn't just wait for things to die down. He had to find out how it happened, who uploaded that video, and why it spread so quickly. Something about it didn't feel random. The internet had made him the villain of a story that wasn't even true. But deep inside, Daniel made a silent promise to himself. He would uncover the truth, not just to clear his name, but to show everyone that the truth always has its own way of coming back, no matter how buried it gets. That night, as he finally closed his eyes, the last thing he thought about was not the humiliation or the anger, but the question that now echoed in his mind: who wanted to see him fall? The next morning, Daniel woke up to the sound of his phone vibrating nonstop. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, and countless notifications covered the screen. He rubbed his eyes, still half asleep. But the moment he opened one of the messages, his heart sank. The short video from the airport had now exploded everywhere. What had been a random clip last night had turned into one of the biggest viral stories of the week. News channels were replaying it every hour. Talk shows were debating it. Some people claimed he had been caught smuggling something dangerous. Others insisted it was part of a deeper government scandal. A few people even edited the video to make it look worse, slowing it down and adding fake audio clips. Every corner of the internet seemed to have an opinion about him, and none of them matched the truth. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. His apartment, once a quiet place of rest, now felt like a cage. He opened his laptop and searched his own name. It was everywhere. His photo, his record, even old interviews from past missions were being used to twist the story. One article called him the fallen agent. Another said he was under secret investigation. None of it was true. He felt a strange mix of anger and disbelief. He had dedicated his life to protecting others, but now, when he needed truth on his side, the world seemed blind to it. He reached for his coffee mug but realized his hands were shaking slightly. He took a deep breath and tried to steady himself. His phone rang again. It was his supervisor. The tone was serious. "Daniel, you need to stay low for now," his supervisor said. "The Bureau's communication team is handling it, but the higher-ups want you off the radar until things calm down." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Off the radar? I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," the voice replied quietly. "But the public doesn't care about that right now. They care about what they see online. We just need to let this cool off." The call ended and Daniel sat there in silence. It was the first time in his career he had been told to step back. He knew the Bureau was trying to protect its image, but it still felt like being abandoned. He closed his phone and walked to the window. Outside, the city looked the same, cars moving, people walking. Yet everything in his life had changed overnight. Later that day, his neighbor knocked on his door. She smiled awkwardly, pretending to act casual. "Hey, I saw you on TV," she said softly. "That must be tough, huh?" Daniel gave a small nod. "It's just a misunderstanding. It'll clear up soon." She nodded again but didn't seem convinced. "Well, hope everything's okay." She left quickly, and as Daniel closed the door, he realized how different her tone had been. The warmth was gone. Now there was curiosity and doubt. The next few days were the hardest. Every time he checked his phone, there was a new article or a fresh wave of comments. Some people supported him, but most didn't. Some even went as far as calling for his arrest. He tried not to read them, but it was impossible to ignore. He felt like the whole world had turned into a courtroom, and he was the accused standing alone with no lawyer. He decided to call an old friend who worked in the Bureau's media unit. "Do you know who posted that video first?" he asked. His friend hesitated before answering. The original upload came from a new account. No real name, no profile picture. It was created just hours before the video went up. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. The clip was edited to make you look guilty. That caught Daniel's attention. "Edited?" he repeated. "Yes. The sound was enhanced, the timing adjusted. It wasn't random, Daniel. Someone wanted this to blow up." He thanked his friend and ended the call. For the first time in days, he felt a flicker of purpose again. Maybe this wasn't just bad luck, maybe someone had planned it. He knew he had to find out who. But before he could start, another blow hit him. A news channel aired an interview with a supposed insider who claimed Daniel had been under review for past cases. The report was full of lies, but it spread faster than the truth. He tried calling the channel to deny it, but no one cared. They had their story, and that was all that mattered. The next morning, he went out to buy groceries. As he walked through the store, he could feel eyes on him. Two teenagers near the counter whispered his name. A man in the aisle stared for a moment too long. One woman even pulled out her phone, pretending to text but clearly recording. Daniel tried to ignore it, but it hurt more than he expected. For the first time, he understood what it felt like to lose your identity in public. Back home, he sat down and opened his old case files. He wanted to see if there was anyone who might hold a grudge, someone who had a reason to humiliate him like this. Over the years, he had arrested corrupt businessmen, exposed smugglers, and even helped in major national cases. It wasn't hard to imagine that one of them might still want revenge. He went through dozens of reports until one name caught his eye. A wealthy businessman he had helped investigate 2 years ago. That man had lost everything when his crimes were exposed. During the trial, he had even shouted that he would make them all pay. Daniel remembered that moment clearly. The man had powerful friends and connections, some even outside the country. Could it be him? The thought stuck in Daniel's mind. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. The way the video spread, the speed of the rumors, the edited clips. It felt too coordinated for random internet chaos. He wrote the name down in a notebook and circled it. That evening, Daniel received an email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "You should have stayed quiet." His stomach dropped as he opened it. Inside was just a link. A short clip from the same video, now edited to include dramatic music and fake captions. It ended with the words, "Not so clean anymore, are you?" Daniel felt a chill run through him. It wasn't just online noise anymore. Someone was targeting him directly. He deleted the email, took a deep breath, and decided it was time to act. He called another trusted contact from his old cyber team, a quiet analyst who owed him a favor. "I need your help," Daniel said. "Can you trace where a viral video started?" "It's not easy," the analyst replied. "But if you send me the link, I'll see what I can find." For the next few days, Daniel kept to himself. He avoided the news, stayed indoors, and tried to focus on finding answers. Late one night, his contact finally called back. "You were right," the analyst said. "The first upload came from an account linked to an offshore server. It connects to a media company, one that's funded by the same businessman from your old case." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He wasn't imagining it. This was real. Someone had gone to great lengths to ruin him. He sat there for a long moment, processing everything. The fear he had felt earlier began to turn into quiet determination. If someone wanted to destroy his reputation, he would make sure the truth destroyed theirs instead. He started collecting every piece of evidence he could: screenshots, upload times, social media accounts, even timestamps from when the video first appeared. He made notes, cross-referenced details, and slowly began to see the pattern. The people who first shared the video were all connected to fake accounts created around the same date. It was a network, not just random viewers. As days passed, the noise online began to shift slightly. Some people started questioning the story, noticing inconsistencies. A few journalists reached out to Daniel asking for his side. He agreed to one interview, not with a big news outlet, but with an independent journalist known for fair reporting. During the interview, Daniel stayed calm. He explained what had really happened, how the machine had malfunctioned, how he had cooperated fully, and how the video had been edited to mislead. The journalist listened carefully and promised to publish the full truth. A few days later, the interview went online. It didn't go as viral as the first video, but it began to reach people who cared about facts. The comments slowly changed tone. Some apologized, others admitted they had been wrong. But Daniel knew it wasn't over yet. Whoever was behind this had resources, and they wouldn't stop easily. Still, for the first time since that horrible day at the airport, Daniel felt hope. He wasn't just a victim anymore. He was fighting back. And deep down, he knew that once he uncovered the person who started this and why, the whole story would turn in his favor. He turned off his phone, leaned back on the couch, and looked out the window. The city lights flickered outside, reflecting on the glass. He whispered quietly to himself, "You can take my name, but not my truth." The war against the lie had just begun. Days turned into weeks, but the noise around Daniel still hadn't faded. The viral video was still floating across social media, resurfacing again and again in new forms. Every time he thought it was finally disappearing, someone would repost it with a new caption or a fresh rumor. It was exhausting, yet he refused to give up. Deep inside, he knew he was getting closer to the truth. He spent most of his time at home, studying the evidence he had collected. His living room looked more like a small investigation office now. There were printouts, notes, and maps pinned to the wall. His laptop stayed open almost all day, showing different accounts that had shared the video. He was piecing together a puzzle that very few people even believed existed. One evening, his phone buzzed. It was the cyber analyst he had spoken to earlier. "I found something new," the voice said. "Remember that media company linked to the businessman? One of their editors just uploaded a private clip to a closed server. It matches the exact frame rate of your viral video." Daniel frowned. "So they made it themselves?" "Looks like it. The clip was prepared before it ever hit the internet. Someone inside that company edited it and then spread it through fake accounts. That was the confirmation he needed." He thanked the analyst, ended the call, and stared at his wall of notes. Everything pointed to one man, the same businessman whose corruption case he had helped expose years ago. The same man who had publicly sworn revenge. Daniel sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The pieces fit perfectly, but he still didn't have enough proof to make it official. He needed something solid, something that would stand in front of a judge or the Bureau's board. The next morning, he decided to reach out to an old colleague, a quiet investigator named Reed who still worked at the Bureau. Reed had always trusted him and had helped him on many cases in the past. When Daniel called, Reed hesitated at first, afraid of being seen talking to someone under suspension, but eventually agreed to meet. They met in a small coffee shop outside the city. Reed looked around nervously before sitting down. "You shouldn't be seen here," he whispered. "People are still talking about that video." Daniel smiled slightly. "I know, but I need your help. I think I found who's behind it." He laid out the evidence and the media company connection, the fake accounts, the offshore links, everything. Reed listened carefully, his eyes narrowing with focus. "If what you're saying is true, this isn't just a smear campaign," he said quietly. "This is organized manipulation. That company's been under watch before for spreading fake stories." Daniel nodded. "Then we need to prove it. But I can't do it alone. I'm still off duty." Reed thought for a moment, then leaned closer. "I'll see what I can do from the inside. But be careful, Daniel. Whoever you're up against has money and power. They won't stop easily." For the next few days, Daniel and Reed communicated secretly. Reed managed to send Daniel internal reports, emails, and data logs that hinted at financial transactions between the businessman's group and the media company. It was clear. Money had exchanged hands shortly before the video went viral. One late night, while reviewing the documents, Daniel found an email attachment buried deep within a folder. It was a draft of a press article, dated 2 days before the airport incident even happened. The headline read, "FBI agent involved in scandal, internal inquiry begins." His hands froze over the keyboard. That meant the story had been prepared in advance. The whole thing had been planned. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. He printed out the file and stared at it, realizing how deep this setup went. The businessman hadn't just taken revenge. He had built an entire fake scandal around him. The next morning, he drove to meet Reed again. The streets were still quiet, the city waking up under a pale sunrise. Reed looked tired but determined. When Daniel showed him the document, Reed's eyes widened. "This changes everything," he said. "If the story was written before it happened, that proves premeditation." They agreed to prepare a full report and take it to someone inside the Bureau's internal affairs who they both trusted. But before they could move forward, something unexpected happened. Daniel's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. It read, "Stop digging or we'll release the rest." He froze, staring at the screen. The message included a short video clip, grainy footage from his own street, showing him leaving his apartment the previous night. Someone was watching him. For the first time, fear crept in. This wasn't just about his reputation anymore. It was personal. Someone was tracking his movements, trying to scare him into silence. But instead of backing down, Daniel's resolve grew stronger. He called Reed immediately and told him about the message. Reed's voice was tense. "You need to stay careful, Daniel. They're watching because they know you're close to the truth." That evening, Daniel sat alone in his dark living room, thinking about everything he had lost. His job, his peace, his reputation. But then he thought about why he had joined the Bureau in the first place, to fight injustice, to protect the truth no matter how hard it got. He couldn't stop now. The next day, Reed managed to get an appointment with the Internal Affairs officer, a woman known for her integrity and sharp judgment. They met secretly in her office after hours. Daniel explained everything, showing her the documents, the data trail, the fake accounts, and the pre-written article. She listened carefully, not interrupting once. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair. "This is serious," she said quietly. "If what you've shown me is verified, it's not just an attack on you. It's an attack on the Bureau itself." She promised to open an internal investigation immediately. But she also warned Daniel to stay low, as things could get dangerous once the people behind this realized the truth was about to come out. For the next few days, Daniel waited anxiously. Every knock on the door made his heart jump. Every unknown number on his phone made him pause. He barely slept, constantly checking his security cameras and going over the evidence again and again. Then one night, Reed called with news. "They've confirmed the digital links," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "The businessman's company paid for the video's production and the fake accounts. They even found communication logs between his assistants and the media editors." Daniel felt relief for the first time in months. The proof was real. Everything he had suspected was now verified. The Bureau was preparing a public statement to clear his name, but before that could happen, the story took one last twist. The businessman's legal team tried to claim the video was a journalistic error, insisting they had no intent to defame anyone. They offered money for Daniel to drop the matter quietly. Daniel refused. "I don't want money," he said firmly. "I just want the truth." A week later, Internal Affairs completed their report. The findings were made official. The airport body search had been completely routine, and Daniel had done nothing wrong. The so-called scandal was confirmed to be a planned act of digital manipulation. When the Bureau released the official statement, the media that once mocked him suddenly began using new headlines. "FBI agent cleared of all allegations." "Viral story proven false," and "Investigation reveals orchestrated smear campaign." Daniel watched the news quietly from his couch. He didn't feel joy or victory, just relief. The truth had finally surfaced. Yet he knew that the internet rarely apologized. Many would move on. Others would still believe the lies. But for him, clearing his name was enough. Later that night, Reed visited him. "You did it," he said with a small smile. "Most people would have given up." Daniel looked out of the window, his voice calm. "I didn't do it for me. I did it because truth deserves a chance even when no one wants to hear it." He thanked Reed for his loyalty and friendship. They both knew the case wasn't just about one man being framed. It was a reflection of how fragile truth could be in a world where lies spread faster than facts. As Reed left, Daniel sat down and turned off the TV. The room was quiet again, the same silence he used to enjoy before everything changed. But now that silence carried weight, the kind that only comes after a storm. He picked up his notebook and wrote one last line under all his notes. "They tried to bury me with lies, but they forgot I was still breathing." He smiled faintly, closed the book, and leaned back. The nightmare was almost over, but his mission to protect truth had just begun. Silence at first. The same media channels that had once filled the air with speculation and rumors suddenly grew quiet. The video that had made him a target for humiliation was now being described as a case of digital manipulation, but the damage had already been done. Daniel watched the press conference from his living room. His name, once dragged through the mud, was finally being spoken with respect again. The Bureau's spokesperson explained how false evidence had been used to spread misinformation, and how investigators had traced everything back to a private company paid to damage Daniel's image. The truth was out, but it didn't erase the pain. He sat there quietly as the cameras rolled. There were no cheers, no applause, just the slow return of his dignity. When the statement ended, he turned off the television and leaned back. His apartment was still the same, small, quiet, with files scattered on the table, but it felt different now. It felt like a place where he could breathe again. Later that day, his phone began to buzz nonstop. Friends, old colleagues, even strangers were sending him messages of support. Some apologized for believing what they saw online. Others simply wrote, "Glad the truth won." Daniel appreciated their words, but deep down he knew this wasn't a complete victory. Once the internet marks you, it never fully forgets. He decided to step outside for the first time in days. As he walked through the streets, a few people recognized him. Some smiled politely, others whispered softly to each other. One man stopped him and said, "Hey, I saw your story. What they did to you was wrong. Glad you fought back." Daniel thanked him, nodding with a small smile. It was the first time a stranger's words didn't feel heavy. For so long he had been the man in the viral video, the one accused of something he didn't do. Now, for the first time, people were starting to see him as the man who stood for truth. When he returned home, there was a message from the Bureau's director waiting in his inbox. It was short but meaningful. "Welcome back, Agent. We knew the truth would find its way. Report next week. Your reinstatement is official." Daniel read the line several times, letting it sink in. His badge, the symbol of everything he had worked for, was finally his again. But this time it meant more than before. It wasn't just a job now. It was a reminder that integrity could still survive lies. The following week, Daniel returned to the Bureau's office. The halls were the same, but the atmosphere had changed. Some people greeted him warmly. Others kept their distance, unsure what to say. He didn't mind. He wasn't there for sympathy. He just wanted to get back to doing what he loved. His supervisor met him in the hallway, smiling faintly. "Good to have you back," he said. "You handled this with more patience than most could." Daniel nodded. "Thank you. I just want to move forward." The supervisor placed a hand on his shoulder. "You will. But don't forget, what you went through, most people wouldn't survive with their sanity intact." Over the next few days, Daniel eased back into his work. But something inside him had shifted. He noticed how easily rumors could destroy lives, how fragile public trust could be, and how technology meant to connect people could be turned into a weapon. He had spent his career chasing criminals in the real world, but now he understood that the new battleground wasn't just physical, it was digital. He started volunteering in community programs that helped educate young people about misinformation and online safety. He didn't tell them his full story at first, just shared lessons about how one wrong video or false rumor could change someone's life. The students listened closely, some nodding, others asking questions. He could see in their faces how much they needed to hear it. One afternoon, after giving a talk at a local college, a student came up to him. "Sir, I think I saw your video months ago," she said hesitantly. "I didn't know it wasn't true. I even shared it once. I'm really sorry." Daniel smiled softly. "Don't be. That's why I'm here, to remind people to question what they see. I can't blame anyone for believing what looked real, but I can teach them to think twice next time." Her eyes filled with tears. "I will, I promise." Moments like that gave him strength. Every apology, every changed mind was a small victory. Slowly, he began to feel that maybe all the suffering hadn't been for nothing. Months passed, and his reputation inside the Bureau grew even stronger than before. He wasn't just known as the dedicated agent anymore. He was known as the man who faced a storm of lies and came out stronger. Reporters reached out for interviews, and even though he preferred privacy, he agreed to one, the same journalist who had given him a fair chance months earlier. During the interview, Daniel spoke calmly. "When people saw that video, they thought they knew the story. They didn't. I learned that truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. You just have to be patient enough to listen." The interview went viral, but this time in a good way. People admired his composure, his refusal to lash out, and his willingness to forgive. For once, the internet wasn't laughing or accusing. It was learning. Still, not everything was easy. Some nights he still woke up thinking about that day at the airport. The sound of the metal detector, the people whispering, the flashing cameras. It wasn't trauma exactly, but a memory that reminded him how quickly life could turn. He had seen criminals manipulate evidence before, but he had never imagined being the victim of it. One evening, as he sat on his balcony watching the sunset, Reed called. "The businessman was officially charged today," Reed said. "Money laundering, digital defamation, and obstruction of justice. He's going to face a long sentence." Daniel didn't celebrate. He just nodded to himself, feeling a quiet sense of closure. "Good," he said simply. "It's time the truth got its balance back." After hanging up, he looked out at the fading light. The sky turned from gold to orange to deep blue, and he realized something. Peace doesn't come from clearing your name. It comes from accepting your scars. The lies had hurt him deeply, but they had also taught him what strength really looked like. A few months later, Daniel was invited to speak at a national law enforcement conference. He stood before hundreds of officers, agents, and journalists. When his turn came, he walked to the stage, took a deep breath, and began. "I used to think the hardest part of our job was catching criminals," he said. "But I learned that sometimes the real challenge is protecting the truth when the world wants an easier story. I stood where all of you stand today, proud, confident, believing facts would always speak louder than lies. But one day the world decided otherwise, and I had to learn to fight for my own truth." The room was silent as he spoke. He told them about how it felt to lose everything overnight. Not just his career, but his trust in people. He told them about waking up every morning to rumors that weren't real. But he also told them how truth, no matter how long it takes, eventually rises to the surface. When he finished, the room broke into applause. It wasn't loud or flashy, it was steady and meaningful. Many in the audience had faced their own challenges with misinformation and false accusations. His words spoke to something deep inside them, a shared understanding of what it means to hold on to integrity when everything around you tries to take it away. After the conference, Daniel walked off the stage quietly, a few officers stopping to shake his hand. "You reminded us why we do this job," one of them said. Daniel smiled faintly. "That's all I ever wanted." Later that night, he returned home and placed his badge on the table beside him. It gleamed faintly under the lamp. He realized that while the world had nearly broken him, it had also given him something priceless: perspective. He was no longer just an FBI agent. He was a survivor of his own story, a man who had faced the worst of public judgment and still found his way back to purpose. Before going to bed, he scrolled through his phone one last time. The old viral video was still there, buried under new stories and updates, but no one was talking about it anymore. It was just a forgotten clip in the endless ocean of the internet. Daniel smiled, closed the app, and whispered softly to himself, "Let it stay buried." As he turned off the lights, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not the kind that comes from silence, but the kind that comes from knowing he had faced the truth, fought for it, and won. Not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been wrongly judged by a lie.